the police, who polices the police, and whether the incumbent Commissioner Cressida Dick is the right person to oversee reforms.
I'm joined now by Alice Vinten, a former officer at the Metropolitan Police. Alice, welcome to you. Thanks very much for being with us. So you spent 11 years in the Metropolitan Police Force. Did you witness sexist behaviour and attitudes?
Yeah, I certainly did. I think I wasn't subject to any severe sexual harassment or sexual abuse like other officers have been, but I have seen a range from example, things that you might see as quite small, such as eating a banana in the canteen, and you would get comments about it, what it looked like you were doing. They would call female officers Dorises quite a lot. I've been on a police carrier where pornography, quite hardcore pornography, has been shown on police officers' phones. I was the only female on that bus. I think you've got things like that which, really make women feel uncomfortable. And then you go higher to where this sexism and misogyny really affects your career. I've had experiences where I haven't applied for jobs that I've wanted because I've essentially been told that it would be a waste of a position because I was part-time after having children. And I've also had a police sergeant that I was speaking to refer to me as a maternity case and basically say that he hoped someone else would apply for the role because he didn't want a part-timer on his team. So there's just a plethora of things that happen to officers. And I do appreciate that, I left the Met in 2015, but I'm still hearing from current female officers that these things are happening still in the police force.
And did you ever feel able to speak out, to take these issues to your superiors?
Well, no, I didn't. And this is something that I am ashamed about now. I wish I had spoken out about it at the time, but I really did feel that I would be ostracised by the team. I'd seen it happen before. I'd seen pretty much anyone who complained about another officer, they were seen as disloyal, kind of betraying your family almost. It wasn't encouraged. It was never encouraged. It was kind of like a them and us attitude. Your job, this is your family. And I think that's a really, really damaging attitude to have. It can be very useful at times when you need backup, when you need someone to physically help you. That mentality, that family closeness can be really useful. But where it's dangerous is you would do anything to protect your family, and you shouldn't be seeing your colleagues as family in that regard. If they're inappropriate and if you're worried about them, people should feel able to speak up.
And what you're talking about is awful. It's misogynistic, it's sexist behaviour. Do you or did you ever feel that this could seriously affect how officers tackle violence against women?
Absolutely. I think there's a definite link between misogyny and then offending itself and the way that you see women. If you disrespect women, if you believe misogynistic myths about sex attacks, then you will blame women, you will victim blame. And there's no way that it can't be linked. If you're a sexist, you will not treat women the same.
What specific actions do you think should happen now to tackle this culture within the Met?
I think lots of things need to change. I think that women should be encouraged to speak up. I think all officers should be encouraged to speak up. I think right from the start, right from training school, it should be seen as a positive thing. People should be encouraged for speaking up against fellow officers, because essentially one bad police officer makes all police officers look bad, and that's really the message that needs to be kind of drummed into new recruits. And also women having maybe a female senior officer that they can confide in, that they can speak to, and tackling this kind of really inappropriate kind of laddish culture that still does exist in a lot of police forces.
Okay, thank you, Alice. But what you've heard, not just from Alice, but obviously over the past few weeks as well, do you still have faith in the Met?
No, I don't, and a lot of my constituents do not, and it's really sad because there are some good officers, but as has rightly been said, when police officers behave like this, it makes the entire force look bad, and you have to understand now why women don't have that confidence. And the responses that we've had since then, in the report earlier, that we should flag down buses, and even one officer saying that Sarah Everard should have thought more about whether or not she got into the car. All of that gaslighting is nothing to help improve the issue of violence against women. And actually this review or this inquiry that's been launched, focusing it on Wayne Couzens so heavily, gives the impression that, there's one bad apple. But when you hear figures like 52% of officers found guilty of sexual misconduct between 2016 and 2020 were allowed to keep their jobs, it's more than about one person. There's clearly an institutional problem in the Met, and more needs to be done to solve it.
Felicity, Boris Johnson said this week the police do a wonderful, wonderful job and can be trusted by the public. Do you agree with them?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I'm delighted that the Home Secretary has commissioned this independent report, because it is very, very important that the police maintain the highest standards of conduct and professionalism. And it is also vitally important that women and girls are protected against violence and that they feel safe on our streets. Now, I do think that there are so many police officers out there who do a very, very good job. And I look at my own BCU and they do a good job. But we need to ensure that that is universal within the Met, that every officer is doing a good job. And I will hold the Met to account on that. And what is also very important is that when we do get the results of this independent review, that they are not pushed into the long grass, that we do learn from the mistakes and we implement changes.
Alice, what's your view? Is this independent review enough? Should it be a statutory inquiry that could compel witnesses?
Well, I think it's a good start. I think it's really important to actually define what Wayne Couzens had done, what he'd been accused of, what opportunities may have been missed. I think that's really, really important. But I think what I would really like to happen, and I think what a lot of people would like to happen, is a public inquiry, something that looks not just at the Wayne Couzens case, but misogyny in the force in general and domestic abuse within the force. I think what's really important to point out about any statistics, and the statistics that were mentioned earlier, is they are always the tip of the iceberg. So these reported officers, these are officers that are found out to have done these things mentioned earlier, they are the tip of the iceberg. You've got to think about all these women who would never report a police officer because of the fear around that and because of the power that police officers have.
And Alice, what about the person that sits at the top of the Met? Lots of discussion about whether Cressida Dick is the right person to oversee this and push change and reform that's so badly needed through. What's your view?
I think that Cressida Dick is respected by a lot of people in the police. That's what I've heard. I think she's got good support from the troops on the ground, which is really important. And I also know that she has put in place lots of policies to encourage women to move up the ranks, to improve things like maternity leave and work-life balance. I think all of those things are very, very positive. So no, I don't necessarily think she should resign. I think what she should do is stand up and say, listen, we are listening to you, we do believe you, and we are going to dig into this, and we are going to start training our male officers, because this is a gendered problem. We are going to train our male officers to really appreciate what their language, what their actions, how they affect their female colleagues.
Okay, Alice Vinten, thank you very much for joining us and telling us about your experiences and your thoughts on this. Thank you. In the 4 years since